Thanks for joining us here. It's Friday. Hope you're having a good one out there where you are. I'm Marlon Bowling, your tour guide to the ag commodities. Well, as we look at our overnight trade, I want to invite in a little extra help. We have Brian Hoop standing by. He's with Midwest Market Solutions, and he's located in Springfield, Missouri. So, Brian, I did not see any overnight export sales announced this morning by USDA. Everything quiet again. So we only had that one. Well, we had one retraction a week ago, but we did have one sale of soybeans here a little earlier this week. But other than that, boy, I tell you, it's few and far between. It's getting about time to start that export machine, isn't it?
Yeah, you would certainly think at these prices that we've dropped to, Marlon, that we would start to see a little bit better exports, and so far that's not been the case. So, yeah, trade's going to be a little disappointed with that, but really, I think we're watching what the dollar's going to do. We're watching what wheat does with this talk about Russia and Ukraine, Turkey opening up a corridor to export wheat, and then also, of course, what happens with this weekend's rainfall. There is good forecast for rain, cooler temperatures, especially in that eastern belt that's going to help the corn through pollination. It's the western belt, southwest part of the country that's really drying up, and heat is really taking its toll this week. And that's where it's going to be remaining very dry until at least sometime next week. So it's a concern, I think, for traders, concern for the farmers. So far, the market has not responded, and it's almost like we saw the cattle market several weeks ago, where we had good positive news as far as cash trade, strong exports, strong numbers as far as slaughter pace, and the cattle market, just every rally was sold until finally we kind of ran out of sellers, and the market's been able to recover. And I think the grains are in that same mode. We have to run out of some of these sellers first, and then we can see a pretty decent recovery. I think we're going to see, especially going into, like, say, August supply and demand report, we start putting yield numbers out there that we're going to see yields come down in that report. I think the balance sheets tighten up and the market will eventually recover.
And yet, I'll reiterate, we still don't know how many acres we lost, right?
Yeah, there's always that question of acres. The USDA is resurveying acres in the Dakotas and northern Minnesota. So I don't know that we're going to add a lot of acres, but we could certainly pull back some of these acres going into that report. So it's going to be probably a fairly significant report coming up, because of the acres that are being shifted in corn, spring wheat, and maybe even soybeans. Plus, you'll have some yield adjustments, I think, starting to show up from the government.
Well, why not? I mean, that's normally when we kind of get into the doldrum part of the year. So, yeah, it figures this year. Let's take a look at our overnight trade here. As I mentioned, no overnight export sales, but let's look at the corn board. Our quotes are provided by bar chart. It was softer overnight. We had September corn down 5 1/4. December corn was down 4 1/4 here this morning. On the soybean trade overnight, here, they tried to go higher. Now, the nearby August contract was up 3.5 cents, but the other months just kind of fractionally higher. We had September up 1/4 cent, and November was up 1/2 cent here this morning. Well, let's look at the wheat market. And in Chicago wheat, you mentioned that issue with the possible grain shipments coming out of Ukraine. It seemed to knock that wheat market on its ear overnight. You had September Chicago wheat going down 17 cents. And in Kansas City, here you had the September contract last night, 16 lower at 8.45 1/4. And in the spring wheat market in Minneapolis, well, here you had September down 9.5 cents. We were at 9.03 per bushel there. We'll come back in a moment and discuss what the livestock trade may do here on a Friday. Remember, we have some major reports coming out after the close. We'll discuss with Brian after this. Well, we're back talking with Brian Hoops of Midwest Market Solutions. Okay, here it is, Friday. We're coming toward the end of the week. But, Brian, we will be getting a couple fairly major reports later on today. In fact, 3. We have the cattle on feed report coming out after the close. We have the, I guess you would say, semi-annual cattle inventory report, right? Comes out twice a year. And then we have the cold storage report coming out later on today as well. They all come out after the market closes, so of course the trade will have to sit on its hands until next Monday. But do these have the potential to have a little more market impact than normal?
Well, I think they do. You know, the cattle on feed report that comes out, it's a monthly report. It's expected to be pretty friendly today. Placements and on feed numbers should be down compared to last year. The caveat is we're placing a lot of cattle this month that'll show up in next month's report. A lot of these cattle in drought stricken areas coming off of pastures and being put into the feedlots. So it's kind of a 1 month positive report. And if we do see a positive reaction, it's expected to find some hedging pressure. The inventory report, as you said, it comes out twice a year. It's expected to show contraction in the cattle inventory in the herd once again. So it should be a friendly report for longer term for the marketplace. And then that cold storage, you just don't hear much about it. Sometimes you'll hear the hogs react to it maybe more than the cattle, but certainly if we can see a drawdown in stocks from month to month, that's going to be seen as a positive sign of demand for our cattle and our pork industry both. So it's something that's really closely watched, but you just don't hear much about it prior to the report's release.
Well, Janet and I were actually talking during the break there, and she made a good point. She said that it would appear there's no way that the cattle inventory number could actually come up from a year ago just based on what we've been hearing out of the country.
That's what you would expect. Yeah. You know, it was a bullish report back in January. You would certainly not expect to see that we're rebuilding that herd over the last 6 months, given the weather and drought-like conditions that most of the country has endured, especially in the western part where a lot of the cattle are. So, yeah, it's something that you would certainly not expect and would be a real surprise and a head scratcher if that happened in this afternoon's report.
So we have the early estimates on what the cattle on feed report may show based on a survey done by the Wall Street Journal for the on feed number. This would be as of July 1st. Looks like the average trade guess is 99.8%, placements 94.3%. Marketing's expected to be 102%. We'll have the numbers Monday when after they come out. Now on the live cattle, when we closed yesterday, this is a look at how we finished. That'll be our starting point today. August live cattle were down 2 cents yesterday. October was down 35 at 140.97. And we finished with the feeder cattle market yesterday on the August contract at 178.27. That was up 45 cents. And on lean hogs yesterday, the August wrapped up $1.42 higher, but all the other months were 20 to 60 lower. So keep that in mind. Brian, thank you for the help. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you soon.
You
Brian
too.
Hoops of Midwest Market Solutions. Janet, we're about ready to begin.